I am going to be direct with you. And as the person, Mary, who edits my podcast will know, I am not the most direct person. But I am going to be right now. I want to get sponsorship for this podcast and I want it to grow because I feel the response from this community and the response from the growth in less than a year is that we need to continue these conversations. And to do that, we need sponsorship. We need to be able to pay the team to continue to support me and my time to do this. And how can you help with that? Well, you're listening, so thank you very much. But please, please, please like or leave a review wherever you're listening right now. I literally left another podcast a review on Apple Podcasts the other day, and it took me 2 minutes. It took so little time. I did it from my iPhone. Please, please do it and come and tell me when you've done it so I can thank you personally. Hello, I'm Caroline Marshall and welcome to Bump to Business Owner, the podcast speaking to mums in business, you. I'll be in conversation with some of the most inspiring women and mothers in enterprise about their journey, how they created their successful businesses alongside raising their children, and what that looks like in work and family life. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Bump to Business Owner. I am your host, Caroline Marshall, and today I'm welcoming Charlie Rosier. Charlie is passionate about advocating for children's mental health, family well-being, early years education, and gender equality. As the founder of Babbu, she is committed to delivering their mission to connect the world's parents, give them the tools, resources, and expertise to thrive. At time of recording this podcast, this episode, the Babbu app has been launched in partnership with Children in Need during Mental Health Awareness Week. With the Babbu app, they have unpacked decades of science and their own experience as early years teachers to provide parents and caregivers with weekly personalized content, non-judgmental support, and daily play ideas, making parenting easier and more enjoyable. Prior to this, Charlie founded and led Cuckoo's Nest, where she spearheaded innovation in childcare, creating a flexible, affordable alternative for working parents. All of this alongside mumhood. So welcome, Charlie. So pleased to have you today.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a great introduction.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I can't wait to delve in because I love the fact you're another woman who this isn't your first business, and we've got so much to chat about your learnings from your first one and then where you're going with your second one and everything that's involved in that. So, and I'm so passionate about everything you are doing with Babbu. So, Charlie, tell me, what was your career prior to being an entrepreneur? What led you down this path? Did you always think you were going to be an entrepreneur?
I get asked this question a lot, actually, and actually, Babbu is my fourth business, not my second.
Fourth.
Doing this far too long, and I should be much, much richer by now. But my career, my early career, so I did law at university, and then I didn't want to be a lawyer, and then I ended up working in building in property. So I worked for a property developer, and I loved that so much. So my first 15 years of my career was working in real estate, and that was in the countryside in the UK, in London, and then I moved to Hong Kong to work over there.
Oh,
And then
wow.
my first business I did started in Hong Kong. And what led me to it, I think probably like a lot of people, like I reckon there's probably two main reasons people start a business. One is like they've experienced something in their personal life which is like super compelling, and they're like, I've got to fix this problem. Or they're like, I'm really tired of being good at my job and making someone else loads of money, like I can just do this on my own. And I think for my first business I probably fell into that camp, and I was like, I was already like reporting into the CEO of the business at a very young age and being given loads of responsibility. And I was like, and we just kept having conversations about promotion and this, that, and the other, and they just never came to fruition. So I just was like, you know what, I am just going to do this myself. And I think, and I've said this a lot on podcasts, I think because my dad had his own business and so did my mum, I think the world of, you know, being entrepreneurial was kind of just known to me. So I think that's a big part of it, right? And a lot about what we talk about and I talk about is role modeling and making children aware of opportunities that exist in the world and showing them that, you can be a female leader, you can run your own business, you can do this, that, and the other. So yeah, I think a benefit for me was that I could see that from a very early age, and therefore it didn't seem scary to me. And I just jumped into it with zero experience. And to be honest, it's taken me 10 years to really figure out what it means to run your own
That's the
business.
point of being an entrepreneur, though. You don't not necessarily settling on the first business. And I love that your mum was an entrepreneur because so many, including myself, dads are entrepreneurs, so they see it. So what did your mum do?
I mean, she was an interior designer, and my dad was a property developer, so she kind of did it.
Oh,
Her background was
you can
science.
see the property where that came from.
She was like, again, like, why am I paying? You could do this. This is within your skill set. And so she was like, yeah, okay, I can do that. And then, she absolutely loved it. And I think it was great for her because she'd been out of work for such a long time, being a mum to 4 children.
Oh, wow.
Uh, so yeah, I think she probably, wasn't her lifelong ambition to be an interior designer, but she really loved it when she did it, and gave her some independence and her own income stream and all that kind of stuff. So
Love that. And you saw her do that after she, had that break for the 4 children. And so when you had your first your child, were you running a business then? How did that, or when did you start? How did this fit in? How did that work?
so it was my second business when I'd come back to the UK, and I was actually going to raise money for that business. I was flying back to Asia to raise money for the business and meet my best friend who was at the time living in Australia, and she was going to come on board as my co-founder. And I found out I was pregnant. So yeah, it was poorly planned on, both sides. And I kind of have such mixed feelings of it looking back. On one hand, I'm like, it didn't stop me in any way, right? I was like, well, I know I told my friend, I was obviously super early, but I was like, and she was so enthusiastic for me. I was like, she's like, of course we can still do this business. Da, da, da. And I was like, okay, let's go, let's go do it. The other downside of it is like, I was so aware that I was raising money and starting a business whilst pregnant. And I think I didn't allow myself to really enjoy pregnancy and then consequently motherhood, because I had this like, thing in my head about like not being seen as a competent business owner, and all the things that I think people worry about, the perception
Mm.
of what it means for their career when they become pregnant. I really embodied that. And so yeah, so I think, but I just got on with it. And then, yeah, as I say, I kind of, because I worked for myself, there was no maternity leave, there was no kind of cover or anything. So I kind of started taking my little one back into the office super early, like after 2 weeks, she'd come in.
Mm.
And then after about 6 weeks, I was doing about three days a week, at work. And then I ramped that up to a full week pretty quickly. And again, at the time, I was like, happy mum, happy baby. I really wanted to go back to work. It was so important to me for my identity and for the business and everything else. And my daughter's obviously absolutely fine, like she's not damaged because I wasn't around. But equally, I feel, especially now with everything I know about early years education and the importance of those relationships and that time with the primary caregiver, I do lament it a little bit, that I should have
Mm.
had a bit more of a balance, I guess.
Yeah, thank you for sharing because I have like I wasn't running my own business, but I had a hard relate with that career wise for my little one and went back very quickly. And I think that's it. You don't really know this stuff about early years and stuff until you're in it, and then suddenly everyone tells you how important it is, and you're probably like 2 years in, and you're like, shit, I'm like. You then take all that blame on yourself. I was like, what have I done to my first child in those early years? But I'm glad, you had your right reasons, and like I said, you led yourself down the right path. What was your business then at the time with your when you were doing that with your little one?
So it was a hospitality business, which was
Oh,
really intense,
wow.
24/7. So we were kind of launching and operating buildings of apartments that were for corporate use. So when,
Mm,
I don't know, we were preferred accommodation provider for Google, as example. So when Google, this is like pre-pandemic, obviously, Google would send someone over from San Francisco to work in London for 3 months, and they'd put them up in, our accommodation. But you're always on call for like people losing their keys, getting locked out, like a gazillion things. The boiler's broken, and it was a lot. And I remember one time I had to go break up what was essentially a house party, and I was about 8 months pregnant.
Oh
I
my
was just
God. I was about to say, Charlie, you are amazing for doing this type of work. Like, how incredible for your daughter just to be around that kind of thing. Such an entrepreneurial woman. Like,
I
yeah,
hope so.
the what she has seen from a very young age with you. So, like you said, what they see their parents do as well is amazing. So, how did you come up with Cookies Nest then? Was there a time where you were like, I want to be around my daughter more while I'm working? How did that look like?
Yeah, so I think there's two things really. One was because I was going back, basically at like 6 weeks old, I was looking for childcare, and pretty much no nursery or childminder would take her. They were like, "You mean 6 months?" And I'm like, "No, 6 weeks."
I love that. They're like, "Oh, bless your brain. You mean 6 months?"
Yeah, exactly. Like, no, I know what I mean. And then so really, and as I said, my family, my mum at the time, still is living in France. Like there just wasn't this village you're meant to have, and so really we were left with nannies, and nannies are great, and they can be great. We ended up having a great nanny, but she she also needed a full-time job, right? And I wasn't necessarily looking for full-time care. So I
Mm,
found it really hard to find flexible and affordable childcare for when I needed it. Also because I didn't do NCT or anything like that. So I really didn't have my like gang of mums. And I think I was probably quite early for my friendship group. And so yeah, I kind of wanted something that was affordable, that was flexible, that had an inbuilt community, and also that basically it was okay to be a working mum, because I felt such judgment from those childcare providers of even thinking about going back to work. And obviously everyone has an opinion, and I'm sure that some people are very right that it was ludicrous, but equally at the time that was my situation and my circumstances, and so yeah, so Cookies Nest was basically built around my own need and want. So back to that,
mm,
what makes people do it in the first place, and not wanting to miss out on all those kind of firsts, right? So my daughter
mm.
learned to walk at the Cookies Nest, and I remember
Oh,
Jane, our nursery manager, like flung open the door, was like, "Charlie, she's walking," and I could get there in time, to see that, rather than if it had just happened in a regular nursery, all that stuff you don't see, and you just get an update at the end of the day that they did this, that, and the other. So, and the crucial part was that I was around other working parents, people like me, who wanted to maintain their identity. Their work was important to them, but they also wanted to be near their baby. So that's how that all started, really.
Oh, I love that. And thank you so much for sharing, because there's such a hard judgment for mums who are like struggle. I think it is a struggle, like just a different struggle than others are on. It's like have that need to go back to work, or you continue with your mission and be a mum at the same time. And especially if you're early on in your friendship group, don't fit in with NCT, which happens a lot, or
Yeah,
don't do it. But even if you do it, you also, I think, if you go back to work quite quickly, which was my experience, you miss out a lot with your bump. What mine was bump and baby, but you miss out with that group, don't you?
yeah,
So it's kind of like you're automatically different, and you need to kind of find. It takes a while to find your people. Do you think that's
absolutely.
true?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I know my sister's just had a baby, and she did, I think, bumped baby as well. And again, really, like there's a lottery of who's going to be in your
Yeah,
cohort,
that too.
of whether they're going to be similar people to you, and whether you're going to get on. And and then yeah, I think a lot of bonding does happen when, and typically it's the mums that are off with the baby, and they're doing all the classes and stuff, and they're building that community and that friendship. But if you're not, then it can be super isolating. I mean, I think it's
Mm,
isolating and lonely either way, but yeah, I definitely feel like I felt different, like not a regular mum, because I was
yeah.
doing things differently. And then you kind of embody that guilt, and it kind of sits with you for a long time.
It does, it does. I think literally, I think I had to have a second child to then understand actually this was also partly my personality, and I've got to lean into it to recover from that guilt. So I think anyone else who feels, I think it's a really good conversation to have today, that anyone else who just feels this is who they are. That I think you can't really change who you are, even motherhood. If you're got this strong calling for business and running a business, you're just going to end up having to make it work a different way. And you came up with Cuckoo's Nest. So, and so what happened with that? How did that work? Were you a solo founder? Did you get fundraising?
I was not a solo founder. So my friend who I'd started the hospitality business with also was the co-founder for Cuckoo's Nest. And we raised some money for it, yes. We raised some money to open it because obviously there's quite a lot of like capital required to kind of get the space up and running.
Yeah.
And we did a crowdfunding round as well. So yeah, I mean, again, I knew absolutely nothing about Ofsted and early years education. I was just like, this needs to exist in the world. And again, it was really hard. I thought that this is what I mean about like, or maybe I'm just super slow, but like it's taken a long time to figure out business, right? So I think I was just like, this needs to exist. I ran a couple of focus groups, but I probably did them with my friends or people like me who would just be like, yes, this is an amazing idea. And I
Mhm.
didn't think through how long it would take to find good staff, how long it would take to actually get customers, because the big thing I learned there was, obviously your children are your most treasured possession. And when you've got a brand new nursery and you've got no Ofsted rating and you've got no customer reviews or anything, like getting those first parents and children through the door took a lot longer than I thought it would.
And I guess pre-COVID as well, it was a very specific customer because
Yeah.
you wanted ones who wanted to work there as well. And there would have been less of those pre-COVID, I imagine. Now, with more flexible working, you've got people who'd work from home traditionally and be really up for that kind of thing, I guess. But you're not the first founder on this podcast. We've had Sasha from Olio who wanted this model. There's clearly a need for it, but I've literally just come off a podcast with Rachel at Choreo Kids, and it's just such a systematic issue. It's like it's really hard for a founder to do anything in this space because it's a systematic issue with the structure of childcare, not just the business. You're not just running a business here that could be really great for, well, the economy and the people, but you're coming up against so much, like I said, with Ofsted, everything again like
Mm.
that.
Yeah, big fan of Rachel. In fact, I'm having coffee with Thursday. Yeah, I think our whole system is broken. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of all the statistics around the second most expensive childcare system in the world. It is a privilege to be able to send your child to nursery, which means therefore it's a privilege for children to receive education at the most crucial point in their brain development. So obviously I'm extremely passionate about it. And yeah, it was a really tricky business because of all the things, again, that I, was naive to, like ratios and, that was one of the biggest challenge really, and finding, because, if in any business, if you have a member of staff off sick or they're on annual leave or whatever, then you can survive, right? You don't kind
Yeah.
of, but in a nursery business, you have to get cover for that
Mm.
person because you have to maintain your ratios, which means you're paying twice for
Yeah.
your staff costs are ridiculously expensive. And then, the whole mission of Cuckoo's Nest was to try and make childcare affordable. And yet you're coming up against the same issues that every nursery across the UK has, which is how do you keep your staff motivated and pay them a good salary,
Yeah.
and keep the cost down for
Retain
the
them.
yeah, exactly. But it took us a long time to crack. But once we did, it was running perfectly harmoniously. We were gearing up to open our second site,
Oh,
and
wow.
then the pandemic came.
Yes. So the pandemic, and then this will lead you to Babbu. And that's the thing with all of these things. Like, could you be the best founder you are for Babbu if you hadn't had your businesses before? And I fully believe that these things would have all led you here, especially Cookie's Nest, obviously. And so what happened in the pandemic? How did that feel when obviously you're a mum as well? So what age was your daughter? Were they school age
Three.
or? Three. So yeah, so you're also suddenly finding yourself at home with a 3-year-old. But how did that feel with Cookie's Nest as well?
The pandemic, like for many, was pretty pretty horrific. So I was running those two businesses. The hospitality business was still alive, and Cuckoo's
Oh
Nest.
wow.
running two businesses and had a tiny baby.
That will also kind of the world being open, sort of reliant businesses as well.
Exactly, 100% right. And then immediately, very, very quickly, that all unraveled so quickly. And so, unfortunately, the hospitality business died in the pandemic. So I was dealing with that, like April, May, June, was dealing with the death of that business, which I took very, very personally. And Cuckoo's Nest was closed, but we'd kind of moved to doing a lot of stuff online. So we were doing kind of circle time for all of our customers and their kids. And actually, my colleague sent me the video from like 3 years ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly where Babbu started, on this Zoom call.
Oh.
um, and yeah, juggling, doing all of this with my little girl at home as well, which obviously was the first time in 3 years. I was like, well, how do you entertain a child today? How do you educate them? What do you do? And so that's where the idea from Babbu came from, really. And so yes, we lost 90% of our members for Cuckoo's Nest in that first lockdown.
Wow.
Because most of our
Oh.
customers were freelance, self-employed. Obviously, they themselves had, horrendous economic impact. And a lot of families, moved out to the countryside, or they went back to their home countries in Europe or America, wherever. So, but we built it up again. But then I was kind of becoming clear on what Babbu was going to be. And I was like,
Mm.
I can't do two businesses again. It's just not feasible.
Yeah.
Um, so we had a break in our lease, and so we made the decision to close down Cookie's Nest and focus on Babbu, which, as you say, one door closes, another opens, and Babbu wouldn't be here without the pandemic and without Cookie's Nest. So yeah, it's all a journey.
I love that. So with Babbu, when you started to go all in, and obviously you had the idea during the pandemic, and obviously Babbu would have been fantastic for everyone to have during the pandemic, wouldn't it? How did that then translate, taking that idea from that world into a world which is more open?
Yes, obviously in hindsight, I wish that I'd acted much faster. But again, it's just time and place, right? Like, just personally
How
where I was.
fast can you work on a tech app as well? Like, you know.
Exactly. And still trying to like keep another business afloat and dealing with the aftermath of closing a business. Like, yeah. And I'm sure other people would have nailed it, but I just didn't, for whatever reason. So and yeah, and then obviously I think because of that, the Babbu proposition and everything has changed. What parents need and want and are struggling with now is different to what it was 3, 4 years ago. And so,
Mm,
we've adapted a lot. It's, still very much around early years education, because that hasn't changed, but it's less about, I think what's really become apparent to me is parents don't need like another thing to do. They're not, like all this like fear mongering of like, if you don't do this, your child's going to be damaged and not,
yeah. Yeah, no, it's so true. We've
not
already
going.
talked about our feelings of damaging our first child, and we can't be alone in that. That's what I've learned from this whole
Yeah.
journey, is that if I'm feeling this, tons of other women are.
Yeah, exactly. So it's become a lot more about the parent, supporting the parent, and kind of, you know, if the outcome is that the child has had the benefit of early years education and has had I guess it's kind of more about the parent now than it is about the child. The child's like the byproduct, with parents a conduit, and then understanding that the parent also doesn't need to be overloaded with yet more information.
Mm.
Just kind of delivering concise information when you need it. And the other part of it, which has taken us time to figure out, is the community aspect of it as well. So, going back to Cookies Nest, I said, like, that kind of peer-to-peer community, how supportive and nurturing that group was, many of whom are still friends today.
Mm.
Um, how do we build that in a tech product without
Mm.
it being, another forum of
Another membership kind of
that,
thing. I was thinking that the other
another just
day of
like, sorry, carry on.
no, sorry, I should say someone sent me another membership the other day and I was like, I can't do this. But yeah, it is that making something special, isn't it? You are with Babbu.
Yeah, and trying to kind of cut through the noise and cut through the BS that surrounds, I think, being a parent. And it's like, yeah, it's how do you build a really supportive, nurturing world around children and those caring for them so that, we all thrive. Like, I think it's just such a tough gig being a parent. Like
And
anything
that's
you
why
can
you're
do.
here to help us with that. And so did you go down the fundraising route, and what did that look like for Babbu?
I did go down the fundraising route. It was, I mean, it was harder than I thought it would be. I think a couple of reasons. One, it was my fourth business. I've raised for every single one. So it's not like I had my friends and family around, right? I'd like tapped out my network,
Yeah,
which
like
was a
Charlie's
global
back.
network, right? I've been back to Asia twice to raise money. Like that just wasn't an option. So it was starting a lot of conversations fresh and building those relationships with investors from scratch, which takes time. And also I was kind of raising money when I didn't really have a product. It was just a dream and a pretty deck. And I was still kind of managing Cuckoo's Nest. So
Mm,
all those things aren't optimized for fundraising, but we did it. We have some great investors. Um, all of them are super supportive, and I'm grateful for that. But we haven't raised millions, and sometimes I think you do need to raise millions for a tech business. The
mm,
people do it for a reason, and so, but we're figuring out.
yeah. And so tell us, because you've just had this amazing launch and partnership with Children in Needs, and how did that come around? Because I think I saw something on LinkedIn about it, like the amount of work you've put into that. And I think that's such a good reality to share, is that, like, I think sometimes say in a couple of years time when Babby's a household name, everyone would be like, oh, it was easy. You'll be like, I've been plugging away at this. And just so give us an idea of what that looks like.
Yeah, I try to be as kind of honest as possible about the startup game because it's very much a game, but also, I think it's so easy to feel that like everyone is winning all the time and
Hmm.
success is happening overnight for people, but it obviously really isn't. Um, so yeah, I kind of outlined how many months or days it had been since that first call and how many meetings and how many phone calls and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, so they actually approached us, which is amazing. They approached us through
Wow.
LinkedIn. And I'm obviously a big advocate for LinkedIn.
Mm.
But it was on off, and that was more due to issues on their side of things. There was a key member of staff was unwell for a long period of time, and
Mm.
various other bits that kind of, and you've got to remember you're dealing with a charity and a big charity, but
A
obviously
big,
most
big
charities
organizations, it's hard
have
to deal
staff.
with, isn't it?
But eventually we got there, and yes, as you mentioned, we launched during Mental Health Awareness Week. And the thing is for BBC Children Need, I think what they're looking to do two things. One is that they're looking to be like an all year round campaign rather than just this kind of condensed November TV thing.
Mm.
Um, and they're also looking to move very much into children's mental health rather than being around serving disadvantaged children or vulnerable children. They're for all children, but it's around mental health now. So I think for that reason, it worked very well for them. We're very much aligned on our missions and what we want to do. So yeah, it's been great. It's a long-term partnership. So as I keep saying to people on the phone, it's like this is step one, right? We've just
Yeah.
launched. There is a much bigger kind of game plan at play, which does involve, some BBC talent, which I'm very excited about,
Mm.
and some longer term fundraising efforts on our part and everything else. But yeah, it's great to be working with a household name like BBC Children Need. We are also launching with another big charity very soon. Our business model for Babbu is buy one, give one. So for every paying customer, we give a license to a disadvantaged family for free. And we do that via charity partners. So having charity partners align with us is very much part of our business model, and making sure that we stick to our mission, which is, to democratize access to early years education and support. So
For all children. Yeah, I love that.
yeah.
And I guess that's more of because with something like if you carried on down Cuckoo's Nest, it would only be just with our childcare state at the minute for certain types of parents, wouldn't it? Where now you're going into something that really could reach all children, basically.
That was the plan, yeah, yeah. And
Mm,
obviously, I love the cookie assess model, and I think, yeah, in some ways it's easier because it's like a known thing, right? You know what nursery is, even though it was a slightly different setup, but very hard business to scale. And obviously that sector is under immense difficulty at the moment in terms of funding and staffing and everything else. So yeah, I think with a tech business, the ability to scale is just so much greater.
mm,
And with that comes the ability to reach so many other people that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do with a physical space or a more expensive product.
yeah, that's so true. And so as a mum and business owner, what have been your learnings over the year of structuring your time and your work kind of thing? Like, I do think this being your fourth gig brings a lot more perspective, potentially. Am I right on that, or what do you think? Because I can imagine, because I know, so I've worked with founders. This is my other business, my business Upsource. I work with founders all the time, and I can really tell the founders that are not on their first gig. It's just a bit of more perspective in a healthy way, in a good way. And do you think that's kind of y- helped been something that you've learned over the years?
Yes and no. I think definitely losing a business gave me a great deal of perspective because I said I took it so personally. Like it really was a terrible time for me, I guess, mentally. And then coming out of that and being like, that failure doesn't define you, that
Mm,
business, you've gone on to have other business, like I don't know, it just, and so I think, yes, there's definitely an understanding like and I think age as well. And I also think motherhood is a massive part of that, right? I think that, if I look back to what I was like in my 20s, like I worked insanely hard to the point of like hospitalization and burnout. And I'm like, what were you doing that for? Who were
mm,
you doing that for? And I think when you have a child, like you're just you're a bit more careful with yourself, aren't you? And your
mm,
mental health and your well-being. And yeah, and especially I think with Babbu, I talk so much around the impact of parents' mental health on their child's mental health. There's a statistic which I learned the other day, which I can't stop going on about, which is children with stressed parents are 5 times more likely to self-harm. And I just keep that in my head and like, what? There's no point in getting yourself completely worked up or working to the bone if it's going to impact your child in that way, right?
mm,
Like there's obviously nothing more important to me than my child and their health and well-being. So yeah, there's a bit more perspective. In saying that, I'm not very well balanced. I do my laptop sits at the dining table, it never moves. Like where I'm sat right now, we eat around it.
mm,
I'll be on it and catching up on how her day went at school.
mm,
My bank holiday wasn't a bank holiday, it was working. So like, yeah, it's hard to find a balance. And I don't know if
mm.
anyone necessarily has it. My biggest lesson or trick that I've learned is to just time block my diary. So I keep a track of like where I'm spending my time. And my daughter has a color and she has allocated time.
Oh, my family has a color. Yeah. It's pink, if anyone wants to know.
Mine's blue. Yeah, it's like, yeah. So I think, and that's a good way to kind of keep track of it. Are you, and again, for, I also call it, is that a sales meeting, is that marketing, is that a team? Like, so I can kind of get a sense of like, how are you spending your week? Are you optimizing it for
Mm.
everyone's interest? So, yeah.
And I guess for you as well, like that's important, not just your daughter, because I said it's about looking after you. And it's kind of like, is there Charlie time in that calendar?
Well, it's her slash me time is one color for, but no, I'm not great at that. But, there's only so many hours in the day on there. And
Mm.
yeah,
And
as
when
long
you
as I
have a
get,
mission, I guess, which you do with Babbu as well, that's a
yeah.
very hard thing to balance, because while you will balance something because you realize you can't get burnout like you did in your 20s, do you think you
Mm.
could have continued a career like that and motherhood?
I think my life would be very different. Like, there's definitely friends. So that was when I was living in Hong Kong. There's definitely friends who have stayed in Hong Kong and probably still very much have, because Hong Kong is a very work hard, play hard environment. But everyone has a housekeeper. They basically have full-time childcare. They're, it's set up to to allow you to do that. So yeah, I think I would have a very different lifestyle,
Yeah.
and not one that I want ultimately.
Yeah, you could have that because or could have had that kind of thing. And that's, yeah, a really good point in those sort of countries where everyone has a housekeeper and a nanny.
Definitely.
Like that is, I've
Yeah.
heard of that. So, we've had some women on the podcast who are open with that as well. It's like my life is
Yeah.
different because I can do this. What
Exactly.
has been your support system and network like with the childcare? Have you found anything that works for you with this your structure?
Um, yes. So the other thing that happened during the pandemic was the breakdown of my relationship. And so I have invested a lot in what I call the sleepover club. So like I take in vast quantities of children for sleepover, but then I get all those nights back, and so that's really how I've survived. I think the last 3, 4 years of being a solo parent is with that
Mhm.
support. And I don't think I would have invested so heavily into it if I wasn't on my own. Um, but I'm so grateful for it, and I'm so grateful for the friends that have been there during that time, and the dads that have become role models for my daughter and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think you need to really find your tribe as a parent and invest in that. Um, because you just never know when you're going to need those people. Even my next door neighbors now, I can count on them for like sleepers. An emergency, when you suddenly got to go somewhere, or I don't know,
Yeah.
or visit or something, then it's like, can you
There's
just
someone who can help. Isn't that nice to look back on from Charlie, who didn't fit in the mum tribe though? And now I
yeah,
know like that's it must I can't even imagine, going through a relationship breakdown and everything during the pandemic, but to come out on that side and you're like, oh, okay, I did all right. I found my tribe.
yeah. Yeah, I think absolutely. I think one of the things I'm most proud on is how I've navigated these years in terms of, maintaining a steady ship and maintaining, my daughter Touchwood is a happy, normal child, and so yeah, I think it took me really owning being a mother to like, I don't know, a lot of people talk about parenting out loud, but I think the more you do it and the more you normalize it, the easier it becomes, because then you're able to ask for help rather than be this like stoic career woman who doesn't talk about her children and therefore doesn't feel able to ask for help when she needs it, or leave early for a sports day or whatever it is. So yeah, I think you really need to lean into it as much as possible to get stuff out the other end, if that makes sense.
Get support for you, and then also as you are someone you have a team at Babbu, which is hopefully only gonna
Yeah.
grow, and so that must be super important for you as, like, a company culture that people can parent out loud, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got several people off this week because it's half term. You know,
We're still here working.
you're like,
We've
what? Is
done something
that?
wrong, Charlie, honestly, why am I here?
So yeah, I think you have to be, and I think you have to just trust people, don't you? And
Mm,
everyone's got stuff going on. I've got younger people in the team who don't have children yet, but are caring for elderly parents, and you have to just let people, and especially because we are, a remote first organization now. No, we don't have an
mm,
office anymore. You just have to trust that people are doing their job, and so far everyone is. And I think the thing that ties it all together is everyone is passionate about what we're trying to do.
yeah.
We care about what we're trying to achieve, so I think that makes it a cohesive
Yeah, and
team.
how can you not, I think, with what you guys are doing. And have you had much experience on the mum guilt side? I think I saw an article you wrote about mum guilt. And do you have this as being someone so have a purpose led as well? That sometimes, you have to make decisions and choices, which I think all career parents do. But I think, have you had any particular experiences with mum guilt in that sense?
I think all the time. I don't know anyone who doesn't. Like, I don't know, society just makes you feel guilty, or it's just inherent that you're not doing enough, or um but yeah, all the time I worry about like what decisions I make are having on her, the the fact that she's an only child, like is that somehow going to ruin her life?
She has
And I think
sleepover club. She's fine.
like sleepover club, I'm going to be there when I'm old, like she will be the only one looking after
Yeah.
me. I worry about the impact of the separation, about all the house moves. I worry about the fact that, I'm always working, and I talk a lot about being present with the children and quality time, blah, blah, blah. But as I say, my laptop sits on the dining table all day
Mm,
long. Of course, I'm guilty about that. I'm guilty about the fact that, yeah, she's in play scheme this week because I'm working, and
mm.
there's like a handful of kids there. Um, so yeah, there's constant guilt.
Constant guilt. I have a theory on this because one time my husband turned around and said to me, he was like, I spend so much time with the kids compared to my dad. Like, I'm doing so well, like pat on the back because of flexible working kind of thing. And I was like, the difference is like mothers are spending like less time. Well, that's how we feel with our careers and stuff, is like we're not being stay-at-home mums. And that's where I wonder, like, do you see where this is? You're there patting yourself on the back, which you should be. Like, it's great. You're a modern dad and all. But at the same time, can you see why like mums just feel worse kind of thing?
Yeah.
And that was kind of my theory around it when he said that one day. And I was like, good for you that you get to look back and think I'm doing better. But even though I had a working mum and, divorced parents as well. So, she was like main breadwinner in our house and all of this stuff. So it was like, but so even though I don't even really think I'm actually around my kids more than my mum, but
Yeah.
I still think there's the societal guilt kind of thing there.
Yeah. Yeah, you're kind of made to feel selfish for wanting to work and
Mm,
not be around your children 24/7.
yeah, yeah. Or enjoy every minute like I was
Enjoy every
supposed
minute
to.
of it.
I was in urgent care yesterday. Imagine if I walked around going, enjoy every minute.
You'll never get this weekend back.
I'm like, good.
Yeah, no, the pressure is a lot. The guilt is a lot. Um, you know, and a lot of us aren't choosing to work for pleasure either. We're choosing literally to make ends meet, to put food on the
Mhm.
table, warm the house, blah blah blah. So,
Well, all
um,
our mortgages now are based on two people, and obviously that's even harder when you're no
yeah.
longer with your partner and things. So you've got to work even harder as a single parent. I can only imagine. So, and I imagine there's a lot looking up to you for everything you are doing, and will hopefully take things like sleepover club and leaning into and not being afraid to ask for help. Has that come from it as well?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think I
Yeah.
used to be such a proud person and a very like aloof person. And even in business, like I would never have friends in the office. Like everyone would go for drinks on a, Friday or whatever, and I would never go because I was like, I'm not your friend. Like this is a professional environment. And I think then, I think when I launched Cookies Nest, it became so much about me and my journey as a mum and everything else. I had to be visibly a mother and everything else. Then the amount of kind of stress that comes off your shoulders when you're not pretending, you're not holding stuff back. Like, and everyone talks now about bring your whole self to work or your authentic self to work. And I think there's so much to be said for that, right? Like warts and all. This was my crappy weekend. We were in A&E or whatever it is. Like, I think it
Yeah.
just makes you human and people can relate to it so much better. And then, yeah, and then you're able to ask for help, which we all should be able to do. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with help.
No, no. I think that I look back on times I'm like, oh, I wish I'd asked for it more and the thing. So and I think that's it. You never think, oh, I asked for help too much kind of thing, do you?
No, no, I think, yeah, I think sometimes you feel guilty um for putting on other people and everything else. But as I said, like you'll soon find out who your friends are and who aren't, and you
Mm.
know, and that's what is more valuable than that. You don't want to be wasting your time on people who aren't going to have your back when you need it.
Yeah, I think that comes with age and motherhood as well, doesn't it? When you soon realize, okay, they can't handle this, that's fine.
I don't
I'll
need a
just
hundred friends.
no, I don't need that many friends. Yeah. That's so true. What's been a particular standout tough time in business? I think we kind of answered this one with when you lost. Was it your first business you lost?
Second.
Second, how did you kind of bounce back from that? Because I'm sure there'll be people feeling they may be listening to this at the end of a business, coming to the end of a business. How do you bounce back from that?
I think I don't have the answer to that. I think that, well, at that time that it happened, because there was so much happening in the world as it was, June 2020, because I had Cuckoo's Nest, because I was literally picking up the pieces, like with my relationship and my
Yeah,
daughter, like there was no time for like sitting still and sitting with that feeling and licking
breathing
a wound.
it.
Exactly.
Mm.
So I just got on with like trying to fix Cuckoo's Nest. And then obviously like this idea for Babbu was percolating, and it was like a bit of a distraction to be starting to
Mm.
work on some app designs and stuff. So I think through all kind of traumatic events in my life, like I think the only way, and I'm sure like psychiatrists will tell me it's not healthy, it's not a good coping mechanism,
I'm
but
not a
it's literally
psychiatrist, so.
like get get stuck into the next project, like, and I think, you know, business and people obviously give me energy. And so like that was really my therapy for it. And, I think to some extent I still carry a lot of that grief for that business, and that kind of, oh, it was your fault, blah, 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 blah. But at the time, you do what you do. You have other things that require your attention. And so yeah, that was there's no
And it was
real advice
June
there.
2020. I think we can
The
all
only
identify with that time.
The
That
only thing I can say to anyone whose business is like just gone under, or is, not looking like it's going to survive, is that your business doesn't define you. This failure won't define you. And it's happened to so many people, like amazing, amazing business owners who are now, the gazillionaires, have all had failures, have had crushing failures, have had millions of rejections. So yeah, just try not to take it personally, really, especially right
I
now.
think that, yeah. Oh my gosh, especially right now. I mean, like everyone's all over the shop. So no, I agree. That is, I think that's actually fantastic advice because I think we can take things very personally, in work. It's hard not to, especially when
Yeah,
it's your own. But I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. And recognizing that she still holds on to grief, and that's okay. And you'll work on it if you need to, when it's ready,
yeah.
kind of thing. I think that's good to embrace that. And I'd love to give a little bit of insight into Charlie because I've heard a bit that you didn't get on The Apprentice one time and wrote a letter to Alan Sugar, and I think this is brilliant because I feel like sometimes we just need to. It's good to understand the person behind this. So why did you do that, and what was that all about? Why and when did you apply?
I love that you found this.
I know, I dig deep.
This is the problem, isn't it, of self-promotion. There's like just so much stuff out there about me that I should probably
Don't
um
worry, I probably feel the
well,
same, but
what I
this is
say.
great.
But no, it's fine. I'm an open book and I don't care about it. So because I literally used to be so obsessed, I guess I'm so obsessed with business. And this was like early days. I think it was like series 3 of The Apprentice, where it was actually about being his apprentice, not about, now getting 250,000 or whatever.
I
And it was
felt it was
less,
still relevant. I feel like that
that's a TV
show
show,
these
exactly.
days isn't relevant. Like the whole "you're fired" thing is just so
Yeah,
not
exactly.
like
It's all rubbish.
2024.
But at that time he was more respected. I mean, I guess he
Mm.
still is a businessman. Um, but yeah, I didn't get through the casting. So I got to like, I don't know, interview 3 or whatever. And I just felt so cheated. Like, because in my mind, I'm like, there is no one better in this world to be his apprentice than me. So I literally wrote him a letter just being like, and this is back in the day when you also wrote letters. Like I used to be a land and we would write letters to people, to find out who owned the land
Amazing.
on land registry, and you'd write them a letter. So I remember posting that letter. And yes, it was basically like, dear Sir Alan, your casting team, your producers have made a monumental error.
That's brilliant.
I
Did
did
you
not get
get
a
a
reply.
response? Oh
No,
no.
I
Lord
know.
Alan Sugar, you could just tweet him now. Tweet him.
Good
Tell
for
him
him.
I sent you a letter dated.
Still, massive mistake, huge, like Pretty Woman style, you know.
Yeah.
Look at
Yes.
me now.
Look at me now. That's utterly brilliant. And I love that because I just think it shows the personality of people who go on to achieve things like you are with Babbu. And so thank you for sharing that and letting me ask the question. So coming to a close, thank you so much for sharing your journey. What are your top 3 tips for someone with no tech background wanting to launch a tech business or, something they know that will change the world?
Wow. My 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 top 3 tips are, I guess, one is to, okay, first of all, don't let this whole like I'm not a tech bro thing intimidate you. I think anyone can run a tech business if you find the right team around you. Second of all would be don't go in super early to building tech. There are so many ways to do it cheaper, and I've learned this the hard way. Um, and I think yeah, especially now with like AI and everything else, you could build stuff. There's this guy on LinkedIn who I wish I knew about 3 years ago who builds you an MVP and gets it in the app stores in 10 days. I'm like, amazing.
A new business
Amazing.
there for you,
Exactly,
Charlie.
new
Just
business. And then the other one would be to focus on, like, I think we all get, or certainly a lot of people get caught up in this like VC world, raising loads of money, but actually, and right now the market's telling you like there is nothing more important than revenue, customers, sales, customers that love you. And so I'd probably be like, yeah, spend less time worrying about the tech and thinking we're a tech business, we need to really invest in this rather than like, what is the problem we're solving for our customers, and start kind of doing it without the technology, I guess would be my advice. And then when you know exactly what you want to build, find that guy on LinkedIn and build it in 10 days.
that's really interesting because I feel like that's clearly a shift of the times, isn't it? Because like a year ago or 2 years ago, you might have been tech, for fundraising, tech, and now it's
Yeah.
about customer, which is a really interesting takeaway from that.
But I mean, honestly, like I feel like 5 years ago or longer, I was speaking to this like very wealthy businessman in his 80s, and he was like, in our day, you didn't raise money for your business. Like if you wanted to have a business, the business had to make money, otherwise it didn't exist. And I think we've just lost that really important thing. Is like it should make money, it should stand on its own 2 feet, and then you raise money to, really
Scale it.
scale. Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think as hard as this environment is right now, it's also a really important lesson for us all, but it's painful.
Go out and get customers and make some money. I feel
Yeah.
like that's
Go
something my
do some
dad would
work.
say to me. So I've just gone full circle and turned into my dad. There we go. Oh no, Charlie, that's really brilliant, and thank you for that. And it's wonderful to speak with someone who's gone on such a journey like yourself. So, where can people find Babbu and become a customer and be a fan of
Amazing.
yours?
Yes. Please either go to our website, www.babbu, which is BABBU.co.uk, or go find us in the app stores. And yes, I'd love a download, and I'd love some feedback.
And also, did you say for every down paying
Oh,
customer, some
exactly. For every paying customer,
exactly?
you're
So
thing.
you're going to help someone else. It's not just for you.
Yeah.
And where can they find you if they want to learn more about you, Charlie?
Oh, LinkedIn, obviously.
Excellent.
Charlie
Go for
Rosier.
follow. Well, thank you so much again, Charlie, and enjoy the rest of your half term.
Thank you. Yes, remind me it's after. Thank you so much for having me, Caroline. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to Bump to Business Owner. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please do rate, review, follow, or subscribe wherever you're listening. It really helps us to connect with more mums and business owners. You can DM me on @BumpToBusinessOwner on Instagram, and I'll be back next week.